Morning guys, welcome to today's lesson, April 28th, multiply monomials. Remember, you're in your Algebra 2 folder now. This is all Algebra 2 prep, getting ready for next year. Alright, so make sure that's where I'm checking your lesson, that's where I want to see it, so copy over that Algebra 2 folder. Alright, you can see your do now is a little bit of practice with what we talked about yesterday, combining like terms through addition and subtraction. And the first one just says simplify the expression, which essentially just means perform the indicated operation. So let's look at the first term, 7x squared y. Does that have any like terms? Remember, like terms, they have to have the same variable or variables and the same exponent. So are there any other terms that have x squared y? And you can see here there's a negative x squared y. Now think about what's in front of that. There's a negative 1x squared y. Alright, now there's no other terms that have x squared y exactly. But there is something right here, 3xy. Are there any terms that have xy exactly? So x to the first power, y to the first power. There is, which would be 5xy. And then there's another term on the end here, 4x. Now that doesn't have any like terms. There's no terms that have exactly x. Alright, and nothing else. I think it's helpful to write the terms that are like terms next to each other. Alright, so this was purple term. We had these green guys here, and then blue. So remember what we do when we identify our like terms, that's a big step. Now you just add or subtract the coefficients. And remember, the coefficients are the numbers that are in front of those variables and exponents and all that. So really, in green here, it's just 7 minus 1, which is 6. And then you just keep the variables and exponents. So 6x squared y. And now we have 3xy plus 5xy. So that's really just 3 plus 5, which is 8. And then you keep the xy. And then anything else that doesn't have any like terms, like that 4x, just hangs out on the end there, and we're good to go. And we're done. So combining like terms, very, very key for Algebra 2. All right, next, this is a little bit new, because what we're doing here, we're subtracting, and it's going to involve, combining like terms. But you see there's a subtraction symbol that's in front of parentheses, so really we're subtracting everything that's in that set of parentheses. So it's not just start finding like terms, okay, 5x, 2x, you have to make sure that you subtract everything. When there's a subtraction sign in front of parentheses like that, essentially all the signs, positive or negative, that are in that set of parentheses, the signs change. So that 2x is really positive, but since we're subtracting 2x, it ends up as minus 2x, so it's like a negative 2x. And that negative 4 in parentheses there ends up becoming positive 4. Here's why. There's really a negative 1 in front of that set of parentheses. Just like when there was nothing for here, in front of that x squared y, there was just a minus sign, that's really a minus 1. So here, just the same way, there's a minus 1 in front. So it's really a number, negative 1, in front of parentheses, which is distributive property. So you're distributing a negative 1 to the 2x, which is negative 2x, and you're distributing that negative 1, so this is multiplication, right? Negative 1 times negative 4, which is actually positive 4. So just see how that set of parentheses, 2x minus 4, changed to negative 2x plus 4. The signs just changed. All right, and you still have that term in front. I probably should have written that first. You still have 5x plus 3 in front there. But please make sure you see how that negative 1 gets distributed. All that does is change the signs. Positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive. All right, so like terms, 5x and negative 2x, and 3 and 4. And we don't have to write them next to each other. We can see 5x minus 2x is 3x, and then 3 plus 4 is 7. And you're done. All right. Next, 6x plus 3x is right? Those are like terms, so that's good. Add your coefficients. 6 and 3 is 9, and you just keep the x. However, in part B here, this is now 6x times 3x, and this leads us into what we're going to talk about today. When you're multiplying, you do multiply the coefficients, so it's 6 times 3, which is 18, and it's also, you're multiplying x times x. You're multiplying the variables as well. So x times x, you might be thinking 2x, however it's not, that's x plus x. X times x is x squared. And we're going to talk about where that comes from. Essentially, you just keep the variable of x, and then you add the exponents. This is really x to the first and x to the first. So you keep the x, and then you add the exponents, 1 plus 1, which is 2. That's where that comes from. All right? A couple other problems that relate to what we did yesterday here. 6x plus 3x again. All right? What's 6x plus 3x? That's 9x. But then in the next part here, 6x plus 3y, those are not like terms. So we cannot, all right, we cannot add or subtract those. So that cannot be simplified any further. All right? Can't be simplified any further. So on the left here is really what I want you to get at here. Those are like terms. You can add them. All right? On the right, not like terms. You cannot add them. X and y are not the same variable. All right? Now, we just said 6x times 3x is 18x squared. On the right, 6x times 3y, you can actually multiply. And I mentioned that in the video yesterday. You can multiply and divide unlike terms. So 6x and 3y are not like terms. Right? You can multiply them. So still multiply the coefficients, which is 18, 6 times 3. And then you're multiplying, just like before we did on the left here, x times x is x squared. X times y is just xy. So basically just both, if they're not like terms, all the variables kind of come along for the ride there. So it'd be 18xy. So you can multiply and divide anything. Like terms, unlike terms, you can do it all when the operation, and for today, is going to be multiply and divide. And really what today's lesson should have been called is multiply and divide. All right, so let's take a look at the first one here. 8x to the third, or 8x cubed, times 2x to the fifth. All right, so what this would be, your coefficients, 8 times 2 is 16. X to the third power times x to the fifth. Keep the x, and essentially you're adding the exponents. So it would really be 16x to the 3 plus 5. Now, I'm not going to write this out for every example, but just know where that's coming from. This is 16x to the 8th. So what's your procedure there? Multiply the coefficients, the numbers in front, and then multiply the variable, right, x to the third and x to the fifth. So you're basically, and by the way, that x, all right, is called the base, and the 3 is called the exponent. All right, the x is the base, and then the 5 is the exponent. So you're keeping the base, which is x, and then you're adding the exponents. All right, so keep the x, add the exponents, 3 and 5 makes 8. Same thing when we're talking about division for at least the coefficients. So this is 14, and number 2 here. 14 divided by now 2, which is 7. All right. However, the operation is not addition for those exponents. The operation is subtraction. So for the x's, so you're kind of isolating this, right? You're doing the 14 and the 2. Right now we're going to focus on the x's here. All right, x to the 10th divided by x to the 4th. Once again, x, the variable, is just the base. You keep that base, and you subtract the exponents. So it would be 10 minus 4. All right, and now for y, we're going to lock in on our y terms here, our variable there, right? So y to the 5th divided by y is what? So 5 minus what? Remember that y is to the first power. A lot of invisible ones. Okay, if you don't see an exponent, that's 1. So your exponent, this is now y to the 5 minus 1. So your final answer would be 7x to the 6th, y to the 4th. Done. All right. So your rules. If the bases are the same, so the base is like x to the 2nd times x to the 5th, whatever it might be, the variable is really that base. So if the bases are the same and you're multiplying, you add the exponents. All right, below that, if the bases are the same and you're dividing, you actually subtract the exponents. All right. So let's try it out. And remember, guys, please, at any point, you can pause the video and try these on your own. All right. So we have 5x to the 3rd, y to the 6th, times 3x to the 5th, y to the 4th. Multiply. 5 times 3, just 15. And now your x's, x to the 3rd times x to the 5th, is x to the what? It's x to the 3 plus 5. So you're adding those exponents, which would be 8. And then y to the what? Add those exponents. So y to the 6th times y to the 4th is y to the 6 plus 4, which is 10. Done. Same thing when we're talking about dividing. You can see we have a coefficient of 21 and a coefficient of 3. Divide those. 21 divided by 3 is 7. And then that's x to the what? Remember, now we're subtracting. Since the operation initially is division, we're subtracting those exponents. So 10 minus 4 for the x's, which is 6. All right. Next, y. All right, you see y to the 5th up top there? There's nothing below. There's no y variable in the denominator in the bottom of that fraction. So that y to the 5th term just comes along for the ride. And then we have z to the what? Z to the 7th divided by z to the 3rd. So that's z to the 7 minus 3, which is 4. All right, we're getting there. Next. So now, in this first term, x to the 3rd, y to the 6th, z, times 3 to the x to the negative 8, y to the 3rd, z to the 4th. Notice this right here. There is a 1 in front there as for the coefficient. All right. So this would be 1 times 3, which is 3. Now, x to the what? So x to the 3 times x to the negative 8, which is what? So this is now x to the 3 plus negative 8. Now remember, we talked about if you don't know that, that's fine. Okay, just use your calculator, throw in GeoGebra, whatever calculator you want to use. All right. Now y to the 6 plus 3. And why are we adding these exponents? Right, the operation's multiplication. That little dot right there, multiplication. And then z to the 1 plus 4. Where's the 1 coming from? That's the exponent for z, if you don't see it. If you don't see the coefficient, it's 1. If you don't see the exponent, it's 1. All right? So this would be 3x to the negative 5. Y to the 9th. And z to the 5th. All right. Next, we have 28xz to the 7th divided by 7x to the 6th z to the third. All right, so you're going to divide the coefficients, 28 divided by 7, which is 4. And then we have x to the, in the numerator up top, that exponent is 1. So it's 1. Remember, the operation is subtraction, so 1 minus 6. And then we have z to the 7 minus 3. This is now 4x to the what? 1 minus 6. It's fine if you don't know it, throw it in your calculator. Negative 5. And z to the 4th. And we're going to talk a little bit later on. This is really just getting our form down. We're going to talk about how we can make that exponent that's negative into a positive. Alright, and now this kind of combines a couple different things here. Division, which is more of today, and then subtraction from yesterday. Right, if you see this division and subtraction, you're going to divide first. So this would be 20 divided by 4, which is 5. And then a to the 8 minus 6, right? Division, subtract those exponents. So 8 minus 6, which is 2. Excuse me. And then b to the 7 minus what? 7 minus 1. Remember that exponent is 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. Alright, now that took care of this right here, but now we have to subtract the 9a squared b to the 6th. Now we're in subtraction, try not to get confused. And these are like terms. Look, a squared b to the 6th, a squared b to the 6th, like terms. So all your focus on, alright, is the numbers in front. So 5 minus 9. Alright, what is 5 minus 9? That's negative 4. Now what do I do with the variables? What do I do to the exponents? What did we do yesterday? All you do is keep them. It stays a squared b to the 6th. We're not subtracting exponents. We're not adding exponents. Alright, you're just going to add or subtract those coefficients and then keep the variables with the exponents that they came with. Negative 4a squared b to the 6th. Alright guys, this is very, very new. Make sure you're locked into these videos. Ask me questions and remind. Your Delta Math is due on Thursday as per usual. Alright, so get that done. And also, guys, keep in mind we're in the Algebra 2 folder. That's where I'll be checking for these lessons. Algebra 2 folder. Make sure you have that copied over. Alright, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you mañana.